Welcome. We wanted to pull everyone together today just for a few minutes because we've had a lot of questions that have come up around medical marijuana and the fact that the state, we are moving, I think, very, very shortly to have dispensaries open and medical marijuana therefore available in the state. And we just thought it would be a really good idea to pull everyone together and talk through the policies around this, talk through some of the questions and issues, and spend a few minutes just making sure everyone understands the topic of medical marijuana in the workplace here at DHS. So our goal this morning in 15 minutes is to try to help you understand both the policy here and the process we've gone through to create that policy. As we start, I am Cindy Gillespie, the director here at DHS. And
I'm Jim Brader with the Office of Chief Counsel.
I'm Alexandra Rouse with Human Resources.
And Keisa Smith, Deputy Director for DHS.
Okay. So all of this starts with Amendment 98, which I thought, Jim, why don't you start this discussion for us and talk about how what Amendment 98 means for DHS, for other state agencies, and then walk everyone through the process we used to update our policies after the passage of Amendment 98.
All right, so Amendment 98 was passed actually in 2016. It just took our state a while to implement and get it going. We are currently about 2 weeks away from the first dispensary opening, if I can believe what I read in the news. I think the certification cards actually began, you could apply for them beginning in February, so some folks probably already have their card. What Amendment 98 means to us here at DHS and to some extent to all agencies and employers is, bottom line, we nor other employers will discriminate based on your status as a card holder or a designated caregiver. But that does not mean that because of what I'm about to talk about that you can use marijuana while employed here for the reasons that I'll go into. We have got, we worked in policy 1087. You've got a current version out there you can go find. It lacks some of the clarification points that we've added to it now to address this issue. All of our positions, all of your chiefs and directors got with the HR department and went through to see what our safety security positions are. It turns out we have virtually every position within DHS is safety sensitive. That's actually the term. Amendment 98 permits an employer to use a drug-free workplace policy and identifies safety sensitive positions as one of the criteria. And the new policy will be coming out very shortly.
It's posted today.
Very good. So it's out. You can get the finer details on what safety sensitive means by looking at that. But just briefly, if you're in a position where you're providing direct care, operating equipment, dealing with safety or confidential information, protected information, there's a whole list of things. And virtually by the nature of what this agency does, everybody that works here is safety sensitive. We also are a recipient of federal funds for many or most of our programs, and so because of some federal authority there, we've got to also identify those that are federally funded. So if you're safety sensitive, you basically are going to be prohibited from using marijuana. If you're federally funded, that will also be a prohibition. What that means to you is if you have a disability for which you think marijuana will be the treatment, you're not going to be permitted to say, I need an accommodation of being able to test positive for marijuana. We will always look at your underlying disability and see if we can work to accommodate that. Based on our funding sources, the safety sensitive nature of our positions, you are not going to be able to use marijuana and be employed here. So 1087's application of discipline, et cetera, will still apply if you test positive for marijuana.
So Allie, I know that there'll also be a memo going out today that will talk a little bit about, that will make sure everybody really does understand this. And as you said, you've posted the new policy. Could you kind of expound a little bit on what Jim has said, both around safety safety-sensitive positions, that designation, as well as the ADA accommodation process, and how that will actually work in this situation.
Sure. So, piggybacking off of what Jim said, 1087, we worked really hard on making sure that it really did cover everything in Amendment 98 and all that we have available right now. We wanted to make it as clean and as clear to you as the employee as we possibly could. And as he said, we had every division director, office chief, the deputy directors, and the director all went through every single position in this agency, every single one. Y'all, there was not a single position that was not identified as safety sensitive. And Jim talked about some of the reasons why they would not. But very simply, if you ever have to drive a car as part of your job here, which we know with the new employee orientation, you're driving here on the very second day of your employment, that's safety sensitive. If you could, I want to get this language right. A momentary lapse in attention could result in injury, illness, or death to another person. That is considered safety sensitive. Also, if you work with confidential information, y'all, if you have access to our systems, you have access to confidential information. You may not deal with it on a daily basis, but let's say you get that one phone call where somebody gives you their social security number or their file number. You have confidential information. That's a safety sensitive position. If you drive a forklift, that is a safety sensitive position. If you deal with flammable materials, if you deal with food, those are safety sensitive positions. And we also have designated positions. And those are anybody, let me get the language right, who provide care, supervision, treatment, or any service or any direct contact with children, the elderly, persons with mental illness, developmental disabilities, or intellectual disabilities. That's a designated position, cannot use medical marijuana. Same with designated financial or information technology positions. Y'all, this is all encompassing for a reason. And so we wanted to be as clear as we could in policy 1087. We got it straight from Amendment 98, and we said, here's the information that we want you to understand. We've also posted all of the positions that are safety sensitive. So if you're curious about your position, you can go on Share right now. Under the Human Resources tab, we have a shared document. It's an Excel spreadsheet, so it's easy to search. Get on there, put in your position number, and it'll pull your position number up. Now, this isn't a dead document. This is, in fact, a living document. And so if we ever acquire new positions, we go through this analysis for every new position we acquire. So it should always be an up-to-date list. And if you ever have questions, reach out to me or OCC. We're here to help. And as for the ADA accommodations, I think, Jim, you clarify if there's anything I missed. But if you have a question about that, reach out to me. My contact information will be in the memo that you're going to get later today. You can still get an ADA accommodation, but like Jim said, it cannot be testing positive for medical marijuana. There is not going to be a position that will be allowable, at least not currently. So if you do have a condition, we will work to accommodate that. We'll look at alternative treatments or anything we can do to accommodate it, but it cannot be medical marijuana. But otherwise, we've got all the policies that related to drugs or anything tangentially related are posted now. So if you have any questions on that, please reach out. Happy to answer anything.
I think they've been very clear. We said this would be a fairly short, direct briefing. But Kisa, I just ask you to, if you don't mind, kind of summarize and some of our next steps, including talking about sort of the fact that we do plan to do something on general impairment. Not necessarily associated with medical marijuana. So.
Right. So, and I don't want to repeat what everyone has already said. We want to make sure everyone understands the big picture, which is that DHS does 3 forms of drug testing. So pre-employment, and that includes when you come into the agency, but also when you take any new position. And then random drug testing, which Cindy discussed. We're not just thinking about medical marijuana and potentially the impairment tied to that. It's any impairment. So this applies across the board. And then lastly, reasonable suspicion. So if there is grounds to believe that an individual is impaired and cannot complete their job, you can be drug tested in that instance. For today's talk, if in any of those instances you test positive for marijuana or really any illegal substances or alcohol while you're on the job, then you will be subject to discipline. And so we wanted to make that very, very clear in light of the dispensaries opening so that there was not any confusion. As everyone has discussed, we've gotten questions already. Many of you all already may be thinking, what about the ADA? Can I request an accommodation? Jim and Allie just discussed the fact that if you have an underlying condition, we will treat that the same way we have always treated it. But because marijuana is still an illegal drug on the federal level, we cannot give you an accommodation that says you are allowed to smoke marijuana for your condition. So we wanted to make that perfectly clear in this talk today. Today we will be issuing another memo. I know you've gotten several, but we want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. But we'll have another memo that talks about the ADA accommodation, equally notes that we've updated policy 1087 to talk about all substances, and equally it will note that Allie is going to be our point person. So if you have questions, please reach out. Allie will coordinate with OCC. We want to make sure that everyone is informed and has all their questions answered.
Thank you very much. As we've said a few times, when you get things in writing, sometimes it's hard to understand with all of the, no matter how hard we try to be clear, right? Sometimes it is hard to understand. So we don't want a situation where any employee in this organization doesn't understand, as the dispensary's open, what it means in terms of working here. So we wanted to do this today just so that we're very, very clear. As Allie said, if you have any questions after today's conversation, please just go ahead and reach out to her. We don't want a situation where an employee ends up testing positive for marijuana, thinking it's okay for them to use medical marijuana when that is not allowed in safety-sensitive positions, and all of our positions are safety-sensitive, all right? We just don't want that mistake. So with that, thank you all. Reach out to Allie if you have questions, and we appreciate all of you joining us this morning. We will in the future have a specific discussion around general impairment in the workplace, so that everybody does understand those policies and how that works. Thank you very much.